With 2023 in full effect, we're at least a week in now, I've decided it's time for me to compile my list of favourite games that I got out of 2022. Over the course of 2022, like many, I've had trials and tribulations, and in an attempt to organise the horror that could have been 2022, I decided to try and work out what I thought were the best games that I played this year. Ones that have come out this year, and I'm not saying we've hit rock bottom, or that we're scraping the barrel, but we are doing a top 10 list. Now, I haven't managed to play every single game that came out this year, so if your favourite isn't on this list, then I am incredibly sorry, but chances are I either haven't played it or I just didn't rate it that much. But that's also fine. This list is in no particular order, so no favouritism is to be had, and I'm going to try to be as short as I physically can, as 10 games is quite a lot of games to go through. I've also cheated a little bit on them, so try not to judge me too hard. We're going to start this off with an obvious one. And if you didn't get this, then shame on you. But the SpiderMan remaster for PC. I've spoken about this game on this channel so many times that it does almost feel redundant even bringing it up. This is one of the most beautiful games I have ever played. At the start of this year, I made a video on the PS4 version of this game, and the debate on if it was actually worth playing that version or not. The video is up in the cards at the top, but I will give you a little spoiler. I said that it was. So here's what I'll say about the PC version of this game. Specifically, it's brilliant. The graphics look so much nicer on PC than they do on the PS4. Obviously though, that does depend on the hardware that you're using too. If you're trying to knock this on ultra settings using a GTX 780, you might as well just throw in the towel and bring the PS4 back out. The game runs as you would hope. It's really smooth with some minor bugs, nothing game breaking, and it really does just knock some of the more recent releases out of the park. Now the controls are also quite easy to get the hang of, which I thought would be a bit more difficult. You know the experience you get when you've been doing something the exact same way for ages and then you suddenly have to change? Well, that's how I felt moving to keyboard and mouse from controller for this game. It does have the great functionality that it does work wonders with the new PS5 DualSense controllers though. The adaptive triggers working on a PC is something that I genuinely just didn't think they would do. And of course, the biggest upside to this, the main reason why I've put it on this list, is the community support for this game. From the day of launch, there have been loads of people making mods for this game. They've been pulling out all the stops to try and add some weird stuff into the game, either to prolong the playtime or just to mess around and see what is possible. One of the greatest things about Spider-Man has always been the suits, so they've added loads of different kinds of suits in the game that look so realistic that it's actually just beautiful to see. Now the second game that's on this list is Temtem. This one is a little bit more rogue, so if you don't know it, don't worry about it. Temtem is a creature capture title, very similar to that one franchise made incredibly famous, Digimon? Obviously we're talking Pokemon. Digimon is also a creature capture game, but I don't quite think that franchise has made the same amount of money. In this game you've got to run around and grab all of the Tems. These are the creatures that you both collect and battle with. The only way to really describe it is it's Pokemon, but harder with things that aren't really Pokemon. It has a really good story and actually contains a lot of heavy adult humour, which is something that I really didn't expect from a game like this. They've done really well to disassociate themselves from being just another Pokemon clone by making it a multi-platform MMO style of game. As you explore the world, you get to see other people on their travels just running around and enjoying themselves. You also have a lot of endgame content to look forward to when you finally manage to finish the story. Little spoiler, I still haven't managed to finish the story. Now I don't want to go too in depth about this one because I do want to make a whole Indie of the Month video on it, once, I finally managed to complete it. Technically, you can argue that this isn't a game that came out this year, but the actual full release did happen this year. Before that, it was only on PC and it was in early access. You can now grab this game on any console that you want. Coming in at number 3 is Grounded. This is a survival multiplayer game that is available on Xbox and PC, and my god is it great. This is a game that I'm still playing now with my friends over on my Twitch channel. We're doing our run most Sundays, and soon enough I'll be posting some videos over here about it, so keep an eye out for those. This game basically consists of the same thing every survival game does. Eat, drink, sleep, survive. It does have one thing that's more interesting though. It's got a very interesting setting. If you remember all the way back in 1989, yes, I'm aware that was a while ago, a very, very famous movie called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out, and it was a huge success. Well, this is basically that movie, but in a game, with way more detail. There's an enticing story that I still haven't finished, so please no spoilers, and a wonderful crafting system that to this day I don't really understand. There's also a great combat system against some ridiculous enemies. Like seriously, who knew that spiders could be this difficult to fight against? The building system is something that really does set this game apart, at least for me. I found building a base for my friends and trying to work out the best possible way to keep us protected from the terrible wildlife out in the garden to be one of the best parts of the game. And I may have forgotten to mention that the entire map is in someone's back garden, and it's massive. This is again a game that was in early access up until this year, so yeah, you've probably heard of it and most likely already played it, but it's now out fully and it's ready to go. So if you tried it and you didn't know how you felt about it, I recommend you grabbing some friends and giving this another go now that it's released fully. Then coming in at number 4, we have a special number that's close to my heart, Sifu. This is a game that I'm still yet to finish, like most of them on this list, but I'm honestly in awe of it. The art style that they had opted to use for this game works incredibly well with it, and the fighting is second to none. The game is considerably harder than you would think, but then, to be honest, that might just be because I'm really terrible at it. This game is a beat 'em up, with a very strange gameplay loop. You go through each stage fighting the different gangs to try and follow up on the story, but the weird kicker on this game is that you die, and then you're not dead? So you use this talisman you have to revive yourself, which is really interesting. But in exchange for you coming back to life, you give up some of your remaining years, meaning you actually age when you die. You will die eventually, but you need to get to like 70 years old to actually die. But the story's really nice. Kind of. You're following a martial arts master on his journey to get revenge for those who murdered his father when he was young. But don't worry, that's not a spoiler, it's literally in the opening game sequence. This is one of those games that I've played quite a bit, but I've never really managed to put enough time into it to actually master the fighting style. But hey, if you really like fighting games, then this is the biggest one from 2022 that I can recommend to you. Coming in very strongly at number 5 is a game from a franchise that we all know and love, Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Coming all the way from the Borderlands franchise, this game is filled with the classic Borderlands vibes that everyone enjoys. From the quick quips, wacky character models, all the way to the weird weapons that you're very glad the US military does not have access to. This game takes place between Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3. More specifically, it's right after the Tiny Tina DLC in Borderlands 2. But if you've never played a Borderlands game before, I would have to recommend them. They're just looter shooters with really wacky outgoing characters and a relatively intricate upgrade tree. You choose a character based on what kind of build you want to make, and then you just blast through the game, leaving nothing but death and destruction in your wake. But this game is less about the open world than normal Borderlands games go for. It has more of a strange focus. This game is modelled after the famous role-playing game called Dungeons & Dragons. You have the board, and then you just kind of move across, and then each dungeon would be a map or a level. You can still go back if you feel like you've missed the exploration though, so I don't really think too badly about it. If you're a fan of Borderlands, this is a game that you just have to play. It's fun, and most importantly, it is co-op. So grab a few friends and blast through the game together. It doesn't even matter if you have a different system, because this game is cross-platform. Then all the way at number 6 is a game that honestly managed to win my heart over time and time again. Dying Light 2. I made a video about this one a long time ago. I was a huge fan of the first game, and my excitement for the second didn't stop for a long time after launch. This is one of the only games on this list that I got on pre-order because of how excited I was to actually play it. The story was pretty fun. It doesn't carry on from the first game, but there are some really good nods and character crossovers that, honestly, I just wasn't expecting. Dying Light 2 is an open world game where the world has been overran by zombies. People do their best to survive in whatever way they can. The game consists of a main story, challenges, and a load of side quests to give you the ability to further explore the lore of the world and the development of some really interesting characters. I will say, however, the one thing in this game that did throw me off was that there are no guns. Like, pretty much at all. In the first game, once you got some guns, you were pretty much set for surviving. But this one, it's all just melee weapons, and a whole bunch of parkour. I might have forgotten to mention that the main thing you do in this game is parkour, so, that's my bad. But the world is beautiful. Desolate, but beautiful. Getting to run across the rooftops to escape the hunt is wonderful, and the extra addition with the glider in this game is so fun. Although I will say that this game is relatively hard to control with a mouse and keyboard, so I do advise using a controller for the most part. The new system for the grappling hook isn't quite as good as the first game, but if I'm being honest, I kind of do understand. They most likely changed this because the original game had an incredibly OP one. This game is based 22 years after the first game, and 15 years after the fall of civilization. So it's got a lot of lore for you to dive into. If you want to give a big open world game a go with a lot of story and you enjoy parkour, then I think this is the one for you. At number 7, we have something that you might even consider a cop-out. Resident Evil Village. Yes, I am aware that this game came out in 2021, but the main reason why I bring it up is because of the DLC that released of the game in 2022. The Rose Winters DLC. But don't worry, I'll keep this one short. The reason why I love this so much is just because even though it's short, it gives you a lot more detail about the world and it fills in a few of the gaps about what could possibly have been happening. I won't give you any spoilers, but let's just say if you're interested in the Resident Evil world and love the Winters storyline, then I highly recommend you give this one a go. You get to explore the village one last time in a limited capacity, and you can also use the powers that Rose has somehow acquired, as well as get an explanation as to why everything was happening to her and what was going on. See, I told you that would be short. Now over on to number 8, it's yet another cop-out. This is one of the more common ones. We have the Pokemon releases from this year, Scarlet and Violet, and then the good one, Pokemon Legend Arceus. Both of these games are Pokemon, so I think I can slum them in together. We all know about the problems in Scarlet and Violet, but in case you didn't, feel free to watch my video on them. It's in the cards above. With all of those things aside though, the game is a nice Pokemon game. It's somewhat difficult to navigate, but then there's a lot of new features that are kinda cool. It's very much just a Pokemon game with bad graphical fidelity. Then there's Arceus, one of the more beautiful releases from this year. A game that changed the way we do Pokemon. You can catch Pokemon without having to actually battle them. The Pokedex is even better because instead of just, catching a Pokemon and updating your Pokedex, you're actually writing the goddamn thing. You are writing the Pokedex. Arceus is great because it adds crafting into Pokemon in a way that I've just never seen before. It also has a brilliant story and some new mechanics that I thought were great, like those weird electric dome storm things. I still haven't managed to finish this game though, but that was due to a personal issue that I'm sure we'll get into another time. Then at number 9 we have a very unique game that you may never heard of. It's called Elden Ring. It may have won a tiny little award for being Game of the Year or something, but who even counts awards, right? This is as Souls-like as Souls-like can actually get, seeing as it's made by From Software and it's incredibly difficult. Some would say nearly impossible. This is an open world variant of a Dark Souls game which is made incredibly more difficult by giving you absolutely no clue as to what the hell you have to do. If you go into this game completely blind, there's a chance that it could take you hundreds of hours to complete it. Or that could just be me because my attention span when it comes to random NPC dialogue is sometimes what people would refer to as questionable. But the game itself is beautiful. There are so many different settings in the game that make it wonderful to just walk through. My only issue with it is that you never know when a strange threat is going to appear. The bosses in the game, they're always fun to fight. It leaves a long-lasting challenge in your mouth. And I remember the first mini-boss, that bloke horse thing that's right at the start of the game after the tutorial, well, that took me over an hour to try and work out the best way to kill him. It's that kind of dedication in this game that makes it so fun to play. The whole game is a challenge, and it's not just about small sections. Nothing in the game is ever really explained too well, so trying to work it out for yourself, or using the various resources we have at our disposal, like the internet, is probably the best way to push it forward. So if you enjoy a challenge and want to see what's possible with the next generation of hardware, I really do recommend giving this game a go. So do most gamers of last year. Apparently. Last but definitely not least, at number 10 we have one of my current favourite games, Play Up. I'm releasing a full video on this later in the month, so be sure to subscribe to look out for that, as I won't be going into too much detail on it today. Essentially, it's a roguelike restaurant management game. Yeah, I know that sounds really weird, but you pick a main dish and a restaurant to work in, and then you end up going with like 3 of your friends, or you can do this on your own. You can play it locally or online, and you build and run a restaurant. They make it harder by giving you extra things to do as well, and sometimes that's just adding extra dishes, or it's by making people more messy. It really does range a lot. It's really fun to play, and it's incredibly strategic, and because of that, I am personally hooked. There's no story, but the soundscape is really fun and some of the mechanics in the game are just brilliant. But that's the end of my list, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to see more content, and leave me a comment down below if I've missed out on a belter that came out in 2022. I look forward to seeing what 2023 has for the world of gaming. Take it easy.